When women start to melt down, she said, I feel like I'm orbiting someone who's not even looking at me. It sounds poetic, almost like a line from a sad romance novel. But this was not fiction. This was a real quote, published in the New York Times from a woman describing the modern dating experience. And she's not alone. Imagine this. A woman meets a man. They talk, laugh, share late-night thoughts. He says he's interested. He texts just enough to keep her wondering. And then nothing. No closure, no explanation. Just silence, but not total silence. He still watches her Instagram stories. Occasionally likes a photo. Sends a meme after days. Of nothing. It's not ghosting. It's not dating. It's something in between. A limbo that messes with her head. The New York Times calls it directionless orbiting. This isn't just about being ignored. It's about emotional free fall. About waiting in the void, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'll decide she's worth choosing. And while she waits, time slips. Confidence erodes. Reality blurs. It's a slow, quiet meltdown, and it's happening to more women than you think. Here's the twist. This isn't just a relationship issue. It's a reflection of something deeper, a cultural moment, a shift in the way people connect, avoid, and protect themselves from the vulnerability of intimacy. So what exactly is happening? Why are more women falling apart emotionally while men silently pull away? And more importantly, what does this say about modern love and the silent epidemic no one wants to admit? Let's go deeper. Directionless orbiting. Love without gravity. It starts quietly. A match on a dating app. A flirty message. A coffee that turns into a 3-hour conversation. For a brief moment, she thinks, maybe this one is different. He seems thoughtful, attentive, even a little vulnerable. But slowly, subtly, the pattern changes. He doesn't text as much. He avoids making plans. The warmth fades, but never disappears entirely. He lingers. He reacts to her stories, sends the occasional, "Hey, stranger," but nothing more. No intention, no clarity, just presence. This is not ghosting. Ghosting at least offers a brutal kind of closure, but what she's trapped in is more confusing. The New York Times calls it directionless orbiting, a pattern where a man doesn't commit, doesn't leave, but simply floats around the edges of a woman's life, keeping the emotional tether just tight enough to prevent her from letting go. The metaphor is perfect. She becomes a moon without a planet, locked in orbit with no gravitational center. Days go by, weeks, sometimes months, and she keeps spinning, emotionally invested in someone who isn't even standing still. He's moving too, but in circles that never quite meet hers. What makes this so cruel is the illusion of potential. Every minor interaction feels like a sign. A like on a photo becomes hope. A 2-word reply ignites speculation. She reads between lines that were never written with intention. And while it might seem harmless from the outside, inside, it's exhausting. This dynamic plays on one of the most powerful forces in human psychology: intermittent reinforcement. Just like a gambler waiting for the next jackpot, she waits for the next message, the next sign of interest. And when it comes, even if small, it reignites the emotional investment. It's not love, it's a behavioral loop, and it's addictive. Women caught in this pattern often describe it as being emotionally suspended, unsure whether they're in a relationship or completely alone. That ambiguity does more damage than a clean breakup ever could. It robs them of closure, and worse, it leaves them doubting their own worth. Many say it's not the end that hurts, it's the uncertainty, the waiting, the rewriting of one's own reality around someone who won't give a straight answer. It makes them question themselves, their value, their expectations. Were they too much? Too intense? Not enough. And here's the cruelest part. Society still often blames them. Why didn't you move on? They're asked, didn't you see the signs? But it's hard to move on from something that never truly started, yet never clearly ended. It's hard to walk away when you are never even sure you are allowed to stay. Directionless orbiting is not just an unfortunate dating experience. It's a deeply modern symptom, one that reflects how communication has evolved, not to bring clarity, but to offer just enough connection to avoid real responsibility. We now live in a world where someone can be emotionally present without ever being available. And while this pattern is not exclusive to men, studies and anecdotal evidence show a troubling trend. A significant number of women, especially those in their late 20s and 30s, are reporting emotional confusion, burnout, and even anxiety stemming from this very phenomenon. This isn't just about heartbreak. It's about a breakdown in the rules of engagement. A world where commitment is optional, attention is fragmented, and accountability feels outdated. It's a problem of clarity, of honesty, of emotional courage, and it's leaving a trail of emotional wreckage, quiet, invisible, but absolutely real. So the question is, how did we get here? Why is this kind of non-relationship becoming so common, so accepted, and so destructive? Let's dive into the heart of the storm. Melting down in silence. What is being destroyed? At first, she tells herself to be patient. Maybe he's just busy. Maybe he needs time. Maybe he's unsure, and that's okay. She gives him grace. She makes excuses. She convinces herself that a connection this real can't just fade. But days pass, then weeks, and what was once warm and full of potential becomes cold, inconsistent, and confusing. And so begins the quiet unraveling. This is the part most people don't see. The slow erosion of self-trust. The inner monologue that becomes increasingly toxic. She questions her every move. Was I too eager? Too distant? Should I have waited longer to reply? Should I have played harder to get? She rewrites her memories, looking for the one thing she might have done wrong that pushed him away. But the truth is, he was never truly there. He was orbiting. She was investing. And now, she is melting down. It's not the kind of breakdown you scream about. It doesn't look like heartbreak in the movies. There are no dramatic tears, no shouting in the rain. It's quiet, private. She goes to work, smiles at friends, posts like everything is fine. But inside, she's exhausted. Not from one big loss, but from hundreds of tiny disappointments stacked on top of each other, like bricks forming a wall she never meant to build. This kind of emotional burnout is deceptive. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It creeps in through small habits. She sleeps less, eats irregularly, cancels plans, stops journaling. Her mind spins at night, analyzing half-texts and emoji choices, trying to decode silence. It's not just sadness. It's confusion. A feeling of being invisible in a situation where she was supposed to matter. And here's where the pain deepens. It's not just about him. It's about what this pattern represents. The idea that women can be pursued just enough to stay interested, but never respected enough to be claimed. That they can be emotionally available, but treated as optional. That vulnerability is met with ambiguity, not care. She starts to feel ashamed, not just of her feelings, but of her hopes. She becomes embarrassed that she believed something real could come from a connection that never had clear intentions. And yet, what else was she supposed to believe? In a world that tells her to just go with the flow, to not be too clingy, to play it cool, she did exactly what was expected. And still, she ended up hurt. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from almost being loved, from being close enough to taste intimacy, but never being allowed to truly hold it. It leaves scars that are hard to name, harder to explain. Friends might say, he wasn't worth it anyway. But that doesn't stop the ache, because it wasn't just about him. It was about being left in a space where she gave real parts of herself and received nothing in return. Some women describe it as emotional theft, not just time stolen, but energy, confidence, joy. It's draining to keep investing in someone who gives back in fragments. And what makes it worse is that this is not a one-time experience. For many women, this becomes a pattern, a cycle, and over time, it changes them. They become more guarded, more skeptical, more likely to assume the worst, even with good men. They learn to lower their expectations, not because they want to, but because reality has taught them to. Hope starts to feel dangerous. Believing feels naive. Vulnerability feels like a setup for humiliation. And this shift, this loss of faith in emotional connection, is what makes melting down such a powerful metaphor. It's not a sudden explosion. It's a slow disintegration of belief. Belief in themselves, in men, in dating, in love, a kind of quiet collapse that looks like apathy, but is really the body protecting itself from pain it has learned too well. Social media only amplifies the damage. Seeing him active, liking other women's posts, moving on without explanation. It's a digital echo of being forgotten. And unlike in the past, where breakups meant separation, now the reminders are constant. She doesn't just lose him. She's haunted by the version of him that still exists online, smiling, living without her. And in that space, she begins to internalize something dangerous. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe this is just how men are now. Maybe love is no longer what it used to be. That belief, once it sets in, changes how she shows up in every interaction after. It makes her less open, less hopeful, less free. So what exactly is being destroyed here? Not just a budding relationship, not just her peace of mind, but something deeper, her sense of emotional safety, her ability to trust her instincts, her willingness to risk again. And that destruction doesn't just hurt her. It shapes a dating culture built on fear, avoidance, and emotional minimalism, where people connect but don't commit, where attention replaces affection, where presence is mistaken for intention. This is not just a personal issue. It's a cultural one that speaks to how far we've drifted from clarity, from accountability, from genuine care. And if we don't address it, we risk building an entire generation that confuses emotional scraps for connection and calls it love. Asterisk. But to change this, we have to understand not just what women are feeling, but why men are pulling away. That's where we're going next. Because behind every withdrawal, there's a reason, a fear, a story. Let's uncover it. When men stopped pursuing, it didn't happen all at once. There was no loud announcement, no collective decision. But somewhere along the way, a quiet shift began to unfold. More and more men started stepping back, not just from relationships, but from the very act of pursuit. The chase that once defined romance, the desire to win her heart, to show up, to prove intentions. It started fading. Now, we're left with a question that's both simple and unsettling. Why are so many men refusing to date? To understand this, we need to look beyond surface-level cliches. It's easy to blame laziness, fear of commitment, or even immaturity, but those are symptoms, not root causes. The deeper story is more complex and more revealing. First, there's the fear of misstep. In today's social climate, many men report feeling unsure of how to approach women without coming across as aggressive, creepy, or inappropriate. The lines have become blurred. What used to be seen as confident is now often misread as controlling. Compliments feel risky. Initiatives feel intrusive. The result? Many choose silence over action, distance over risk. Second, there's emotional exhaustion. The idea that men are emotionally detached is outdated. The truth is, many are quietly overwhelmed. Raised in a culture that discouraged emotional expression, then thrust into a world that demands emotional fluency, they find themselves in a double bind. They want to connect, but don't know how. They're expected to lead, but also to yield. To be strong, yet sensitive. To initiate, yet not pressure. And when they get it wrong just once, the shame cuts deep. So over time, they stop trying. Then comes the illusion of abundance. Dating apps have transformed romantic connection into a marketplace. Swipe after swipe, match after match, everyone becomes replaceable. The next potential partner is just a scroll away. In this world, why invest deeply in one person when there are 10 more waiting? Why commit when curiosity can always be fed by the possibility of someone better? Men, just like women, get caught in the dopamine loop. More matches, more options, less meaning. This has led to what some call emotional minimalism. Give just enough to stay relevant, but never enough to be vulnerable. It's easier, cleaner, less risky. But it comes at a cost. Because behind every man who avoids commitment, there's usually a backstory. A failed relationship, a betrayal, a rejection that left scars. And without spaces to process those wounds, withdrawal becomes protection. Disinterest becomes armor. Indifference becomes habit. There's also the shifting power dynamic. As more women rise in education, income, and independence, traditional gender roles are being redefined. This is a good thing, liberating, necessary. Overdue, but it also means many men are now questioning their place. If he's not needed for protection, provision, or decision-making, what role is he supposed to play? This uncertainty can paralyze, especially for those raised to believe that being a man meant being in control. And let's not forget the economic pressures. In a time where financial instability is widespread, many men tie their self-worth to their income. If they feel inadequate in that area, they may avoid dating altogether, believing they have nothing to offer. Some even admit they don't date because they're not where they want to be in life yet. Not because they don't want love, because they don't feel worthy of it. All of this creates a perfect storm. Men who are confused about how to lead, unsure of their value, disconnected from emotion, bombarded with options, and pressured to perform. In that chaos, the safest move often feels like no move at all. But here's the paradox. While women are melting down from emotional limbo, men are quietly imploding under emotional pressure. Both are hurting. Both are isolated. But because their pain shows up differently, neither side sees the other clearly. Women interpret withdrawal as indifference. Men interpret expectation as judgment. And between them grows a chasm of misunderstanding. This isn't about blame. It's about empathy. Because when men stop pursuing, it's rarely out of malice. It's out of confusion, fear, and exhaustion. And unless we name those things, we can't change them. There's also the reality of modern communication. Texting, once a tool of connection, has become a shield. It allows for delayed responses, filtered emotions, and safe disengagement. A man can maintain vague contact without ever showing up fully. It's the perfect vehicle for orbiting. No commitment, no confrontation, just digital proximity. What's more troubling is that many men don't even realize the damage they're causing. To them, it feels harmless. They're not lying, not cheating, not making promises they can't keep. They're just not showing up. But emotional absence can wound just as deeply as betrayal, especially when it's wrapped in occasional attention. So what does this all mean? That we're raising a generation of emotionally distant men? Not necessarily. But we are seeing the effects of emotional neglect, social confusion, and technological overstimulation play out in real time. And women? They're left to navigate this emotional void without answers. They wonder what they did wrong. They wait for clarity that never comes. They blame themselves for a silence that isn't theirs to carry. When men stop pursuing, they may feel like they're protecting themselves. But in doing so, they often cause quiet chaos in someone else's heart. A chaos that builds, that lingers, that reshapes how trust is formed and how love is offered. To fix this, we need more than self-help advice. We need a cultural shift, one that teaches men how to process emotion, how to communicate clearly, how to be both strong and honest, and most importantly, how to take responsibility not just for what they do, but for what they withhold, because not choosing is still a choice. And when men refuse to date, when they retreat into orbiting patterns, they may avoid short-term discomfort, but they leave behind long-term confusion, disconnection, and pain. Asterisk, but here's the good news. If the problem is rooted in fear and silence, then the solution starts with courage and clarity. That's where we're heading next. Let's talk about how both sides can move forward together. How to love in an age of ambiguity. So, where do we go from here? How do we love in a world where clarity is rare, intentions are blurred, and connection is often confused with convenience? The answer isn't simple, but it begins with one word: responsibility. Not just for others, but for ourselves. For women who find themselves in emotional limbo, the first step is to reclaim their own center of gravity. You are not a moon orbiting someone else's silence. You are your own world, and your time, energy, and heart are valuable. That begins with setting boundaries, not out of fear, but out of deep self-respect. Boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They help you see who is willing to meet you with clarity and who only wants to linger in your life without contributing to it. This means noticing patterns early. If someone's communication is inconsistent, if plans are vague, if their words and actions don't align, you don't need more patience. You need discernment. Walk away sooner. Waiting doesn't make things clearer. Directness does. Ask the uncomfortable question: what are you looking for? Then trust the answer, even if it's not what you wanted. Clarity now saves you chaos later. But it's not just about walking away. It's also about walking back to yourself. When you feel abandoned, it's easy to make someone else the center of your story. But healing begins when you rewrite that story around your own growth. Reinvest in the things that make you feel grounded: creativity, friendship, movement, solitude, learning. Love is not the only source of meaning. And the more you fill your life with your own light, the less you'll crave the flicker of someone else's attention. Now let's talk to the men, the ones who've stepped back, stayed silent, or lingered without intention. If you're watching this, it means you care. And that's a start. The truth is, not pursuing someone with clarity is not neutral. It's not harmless. Emotional ambiguity creates emotional damage. You might think you're protecting yourself by avoiding confrontation or not making promises. But when your actions create confusion, you're still responsible for the impact. So what can you do differently? First, be honest. If you're not ready, say so. If you're not interested, let her know, not weeks later early. A simple, "I'm not looking for anything serious right now," is not cruelty. It's kindness in disguise. It allows the other person to move on with dignity. It shows respect, not rejection. Second, examine your fear. Are you avoiding connection because of past pain? Because you don't know what you want? Because you don't feel worthy yet? That's okay, but name it, face it, work through it. Don't let it drive your decisions in silence. Emotional avoidance doesn't protect you. It isolates you. Third, take up space with integrity. If you're going to be in someone's life, even casually, be a steady presence. Show up in a way that honors both your time and theirs. If you don't have the capacity to do that, then don't. Linger. Pulling someone into orbit without intention is not an act of care. It's a quiet form of control. And for both men and women, there's a shared responsibility to heal the culture we're part of. That means choosing clarity over comfort, depth over performance, vulnerability over games. It means normalizing real conversations, even when they're awkward. It means creating room for emotional nuance, not perfection, but honesty. We also have to challenge the culture of disposability. Just because dating apps offer endless options doesn't mean people are replaceable. Just because attention is easy to give doesn't mean it's meaningless. Each connection is an opportunity, not a transaction. And let's not forget the role of community. We were never meant to navigate relationships in isolation. The more we talk about these patterns, the burnout, the silence, the confusion, the more power we take away from them. Shame thrives in silence. Healing thrives in shared experience. The truth is, loving in the modern world requires more than emotion. It requires skill, discernment, communication, and courage. We can't control who we meet, but we can control how we show up. With honesty, with intention, with empathy. If you're a woman tired of waiting, walk away with your head high. If you're a man afraid to step forward, do it with your heart open. If you're caught in the in-between, confused about what this all means, remember, you don't need permission to want something real, and you don't have to apologize for expecting clarity, because love without clarity is not love. It's projection, fantasy, noise, and you deserve something better. Let's not settle for the silence between messages, the fragments of presence, the lingering orbits. Let's build something clearer, bolder, and more human. That's the path forward. One choice, one conversation, one act of courage at a time. And it starts with you. Are you a satellite spinning around someone who isn't even looking at you? Somewhere out there, a woman is staring at her phone, waiting for a message that will never come. Not because she's naive, not because she's desperate, but because she believed in something, no matter how small, how fragile, how unfinished. She gave it a name, a hope, a space in her mind. And now she's left orbiting silence. Maybe that woman is you. Maybe you felt it. The ache of uncertainty, the quiet erosion of self-trust, the way hope turns into confusion when someone refuses to be clear. Maybe you've asked yourself, did I imagine it all? And maybe you've started to believe that this is just how things are now. Temporary, vague, disposable, but they don't have to be. You don't have to keep spinning around someone who won't meet you where you are. You don't have to decode mixed signals or settle for fragments of attention. You don't have to shrink your needs to fit someone else's comfort zone. Love, real love, is not found in orbit. It's grounded, rooted, honest. It shows up. It speaks clearly. It doesn't keep you guessing. So maybe it's time to step out of the spin, to return to yourself, to choose clarity over chemistry, intention over attention, peace over potential. And if you've ever been on the other side, if you've kept someone circling without direction, maybe now is the moment to pause and ask, what am I really afraid of? Because in the end, we're all just searching for something true. So let me ask you, are you orbiting someone right now? Or are you ready to land?